Hello, I'm Craig Benson. I'm here working on the history of Black Diamond football. Today I'm with three of my former mentors, legends in my mind, Virgil Terry, Ron Etheridge, and Dennis Rogers. Coach Rogers started in 1975, I think it was.
As head coach.
Head coach.
69 as the assistant.
Right. Coach Etheridge took over for Coach Rogers in first season was 78.
78, that's correct.
And was here longest tenured coach, 12 years, correct? And and then Coach Terry took over in 2003 and was here until 2008 when I took over in 2008. So I'm going to ask him some questions. We're just going to get started. First question we talked about: define your greatest moment as your tenure as head coach, Coach Terry.
The first game that we played.
Okay. See what you're going to. I see what you're going to see.
I mean, I know kids get nervous, okay?
Yeah.
But the 50-something-year-old head coach runs out there, stops on the other side of the shortest goalpost, and throws up on the field before he goes out there to play. I mean, I felt a lot of pressure. These guys put a lot of pressure on you, you know, with the programs we've had at Sallisaw and everything coming up to that, and what Coach Lancaster had done the years he was there. Yeah, I felt a lot of pressure, enough pressure to be sick before the contest, but I felt good after.
There you go. There you go. Coach Etheridge?
Well, I was very fortunate and very blessed to inherit some great athletes, and so you asked me the best. It had to be the first state championship, 1980, you know, you just that's what you coach for, that's what you play for. And it's just, you know, it just happened, and then we was fortunate enough to come back and do it 14 games later in 1981. So I'd have to consider both those, you know, the best that ever happened.
And the only two that our school's ever won. You know, we've been to the finals again twice. When you were here as an assistant in 2000, 2001, right?
2001, 2002, and first year I worked, we got beat in the semis.
There you go. Yeah. Coach Rogers, how about you? What's your favorite moment here?
Well, I enjoyed all of them. I started in '69 as assistant, and it was my old coach. It was Coach Lattimore who brought me here, and to me, he had a lot of influence on me and Coach Etheridge, who got to coach under him, and then Coach Terry and Craig kind of followed in the, I guess, the footsteps of what he laid down. To some extent, we all had him somewhere in our lives as a mentor. And of course, he was a local young man who played back in the 40s here, and then he was started the football program at Muldrow, and that's where I played for him. And then I came to Sallisaw as an assistant coach after college. All the games were fun except the ones we lost, and I guess maybe the most fun was we beat Podo when they thought they were going to go to the state playoffs, and they had told us before the game. I think Coach Terry might have remembered this.
Never forget it.
They were telling him what they were going to do in the state playoffs, and here comes Sallisaw and beats them, and they didn't get to go to the state playoffs. So that was a fun game and interesting. We played a Tulsa team. We'd never ventured out, you know, and played Tulsa teams before, and we run out of, in redistricting, we ran out of opponents that we could play and still play in the conference. And so we had to either not have a game or go to Woodward, Oklahoma, and that's a long way. It's Sallisaw. And either that or Tulsa, Webster. And so we said, well, if we're going to play, we're going to have to play people who are larger schools than we are. Let's just go close to home. So we played Tulsa Webster, and they had a young man on their team who was
Benson Orange,
who was all Big 8, as the outstanding player at OSU as a sophomore, and then he left the team. Now he was a Big 8 player of the year, I believe. He was a different animal on the football field. He was what you call a football player. But we went to Tulsa the next year and returned the favor by beating them on their home field, and that was fun. to go and play a bigger school. And I won't tell you where Coach Terry watched the game from.
I think, mine's kind of a different kind of favorite. I have plenty of favorite moments. I have too many to mention. But the first day I arrived, this is kind of a story, you probably remember this. Somebody else was going to introduce me as a head football coach, and Coach Terry said, no, you're not. I'm going to. So getting introduced by one of your former coaches was probably was one of the moments I remember the most. That we were fortunate enough I inherited a program that had a lot of talent. Coach Terry had laid a great foundation for me. All I had to do was come in and not screw it up. And that first year we went to the second round, got beat by McGinnis in a game that I think I ran into you coming off the field, and I don't remember it because I was kind of in a fog. And then the next year we beat them. We go to semis, and so but I think a lot of the things is that I had a lot of people I could rely on. I had all three of these guys that I could call, that I was staying in touch with. That I was, I tell a story all the time. Coach Terry spent, he'd spend at least a couple of days in my office a week, advising me and consulting me. And there were times that
I never offered anything unless I was asked.
That's true. That's true. And I was always asking him. And there were times that he was dead on, and I didn't like hearing it, but he was exactly right. And I knew I could always get the truth, though. But we always tried to change those things when I got that advice. And I spent 6 years here, and now I'm back in town, and really not another place I'd rather live. Let's talk about when you guys were, first started out. What do you think the challenges were when you first took over as a head coach?
Golly, maintaining the streaks and keeping the tradition going. I mean, the first year I took over, we just come off of 2 appearances in the state finals.
That's right.
Both against Clinton, and one we should have.
Had a lead at the half.
Well, yeah, and then the interference call on the far boundary right in front of Clinton's coach, who made the call for the referees, and they happened to go along with it. But that's water under the bridge. It happens in a lot of games. But we didn't prevail either one of those contests. So, the only pressure I felt was trying to get back to that place.
Good point.
And that's a lot of pressure.
It is.
I felt it as well, Virgil. I took over for Dennis and enjoyed the 3 years that I spent under him. And Dennis was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, that was his personality. I mean, and he kind of learned that from Perry Floyd, and then learned it from playing college football and real hard-nosed football, and just come and attack. And even after I took the job, and I wanted to finesse. I wanted it to be Ron Etheridge's football team, not Perry Lattimore's, not Dennis Rogers, and so the ego played a part. And so anyway, we come in here and we play 3 football games, and we're sitting 1-2. Sallisaw hadn't had a losing record in 15 years or more, and I'm here 1-2, and with a tough conference schedule to play. And so I don't mind saying, I got on my knees and I asked my Lord and Savior, help me. And we shut out the next 5 opponents. I don't mind telling you. And I get, after that, we're 6-2, and I'm saying, I get greedy. I said, God, you helped us there. I need to help these next 2. Let's win these next 2. And we don't get there, and we don't get the playoffs. But we go 6-4, and we built from there. But it's, as Virgil said, it's tradition, upholding the tradition. And I considered every one of these guys. I asked advice from all of them. Even when Craig was playing for us, I asked advice. There's occasions he would say, Coach, can we do this just a little bit? And, I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, hey, I believe you're right. We need to concentrate more, maybe on the play action passes, or maybe on the specific part of the game and so forth. So, and then for sure, like Virgil, I could always count on him. He was up in that press box. I never really questioned him. There's times that I may call something different than what he did, and he would inquire, why'd you do that? We had those kind of meetings, and they were good. And you'd look at them afterwards, and you'd say, well, hey, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And this guy here, I've contacted him, and I said, what do you think? What are we doing that you would do different if you were still coaching? And then, of course, Dennis later comes back and coaches. assisted him, and then later he came back and assisted me. But so the friendship's there. I mean, it's just great, and the tradition that we've had in Sallisaw, it's just great. That's it.
Tradition is the word.
Yeah,
It truly
there you go.
is.
We've been able to all get along. This might sound funny, but when I took over, he had taken my place, and Coach Lattimore had passed away a week before practice started. And I was in another area of life, sort of wanting out of what I got into. It was kind of like, I want to eat cake. Well, after you eat it every day for 2 years, you get tired of it. And I was at that point, and so I had a prayer session, and a week later, I was the head coach, and I didn't want it, but Coach Lattimore come to visit me on a Saturday night. He said, "Roger, you going to ever come back and coach?" I said, "Oh, I don't know." And the next day, I got a phone call that he passed away. And so I became the head coach. Didn't know what I was doing. It was a week before season, but I had Ron as a helper and coached the offensive line, and we got through the season 7-3, looking forward to another good season, and we made another 7-3 run, and Coach Terry came to coach for me, so I'd known him in college, so I had 2 guys now on the staff that I knew, trusted, and then that year, Craig was what, sophomore?
I was a freshman.
Freshman. I asked him to be my helper in coaching the 8th grade. I was working with the 8th grade, and I asked Craig if he would help me in 8th grade. So we've all gotten along and know each other, and that's I think that's the tradition that we had here. Nobody was jealous of anybody. Everybody. I scouted for Coach Etheridge even after I got out. Went to church with him, fished with him, hunted with him. I got out because I was just worn out, and had a little boy. So I raised him, and then I came back and coached for Coach Etheridge. So,
For lack of better words, everybody's tied together through, not just through football, but through family. My brother and sister played for you, Coach Rogers.
yeah.
You two, all 3 of you guys worked together. I played for all 3 of you at one time. I coached your grandson, one of my favorite players. So
Very well.
it goes a little bit deeper than just. Doing this segment, we're talking about just football. It's not just about football. It's a lot about the things that got us here, the things that keep bringing us back to it. And I don't have a moment of time of anything. I've got some, the things that I remember the most that I don't get to enjoy all the good times. There are a bunch of simple times I had, but we're going to talk about this in just a second. But the worst part, of this job is probably the microscope that you're under, the expectations of this community. But who would want a job where there wasn't any expectations? I've had one of those. Wasn't very good, And so when you talk about doing this, we're not doing this job over the drugstore, and I don't have anything to do with the drugstore or the supermarkets or anything like that. But we're in here talking about Sallisaw football for a reason. It's been a staple, and it's been something that has bonded our town together, and so and we were, in my opinion, we're a big part of that. We were all able to capitalize on the ones before us, and able to foster an environment that kept that tradition alive. And we've kind of, here in these latter years, we've slipped a little bit, and we're all trying to, still a part of this, trying to get this thing back on track and trying to get it fixed. But I would have to say the worst part of my tenure here was the second round. It's going to be, these are all games now. They're all bad games now. But the worst part of mine was, I thought my first year here I had a team that I thought had all the pieces to the puzzle, and we go to McGinnis, and we take the lead. We're down 28-3 at halftime. Come storming back, take the lead with a minute 59, and we're out of timeouts. And we're not going to onside kick it. We kick it deep and pin them deep, and it's 30. We're up 33-31 with a minute 59 left, and pin them deep on the 14-yard line. And then the world flipped over on its axis the other way and skipped off a kid's head, and he goes to a minute later he goes to scores with 39 seconds left, something like that. And that was probably the best opportunity I thought that we had to get to the finals and have a chance to win it. The next year, I had a really good team in 2009 too that went to the semifinals, but they didn't have all the pieces like that one in 2008 had. I feel like so.
Should have double covered that big tight end.
We should have taught me a lesson.
What a player, though.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
It went on to be an even better player.
He did. How about you, Coach Terry? What's your worst moment?
Oh, golly.
Don't steal mine, Virgil.
I bet you don't mind.
There are so many that just deflate you, make you. I mean, it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick a worst moment. I think the worst moment I ever had was deciding I was going to quit.
Okay.
And
Okay.
not pursue it anymore. I'll tell you the truth. I felt honored to be the head football coach at Sallisaw. Didn't much care for it. It took away, I don't know what it did, it took away the fun part of it.
The pureness
for me.
of teaching.
I had to,
Oversee.
I didn't get to have my groups of kids to interact with so much. I had the whole thing, and that's a lot more difficult. I truly love coaching linebackers. I love coaching receivers. I love being an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. But when you gave it all to me, it came down to every time the phone rang, I was hoping it wasn't something about one of our kids.
Right.
Or, well, he was mean in English class. He smarted off to the principal. I don't like dealing with those things. I'd rather deal with stopping a running back for somebody or a good receiver or something like that.
And you
really
could do that,
didn't
Virgil. You were good at
enjoy
doing
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You were good at doing that. I tell you, there's several. I mean, I wish I could have scripted everything,
glad
but
I
this is
wasn't
the best
the
that we
only
did.
Right,
This is
right.
the best that we did. But I mean, one that pops up. I mean, and I told him not to steal it because we're setting 9-2, and this is 1979. He's the quarterback, and we go up to Blake Grove. First off, we stop at this restaurant that tells us, hey, everyone that's ate a pregame meal, here's one. You're gonna win tonight. There's no question about it.
I never heard that story.
There was
I never heard that story.
eight of them that stopped here and ate a pregame meal. We had a good pregame meal. We go up there, we get down. We're down 14-0, and we're still trying to score, and we can't score. And this game has a lot of moments. I mean, one, they cut our headphones. It's the only time I'd ever coached where someone cut your headphones.
back in the old days, we had to string the wire.
That's right, strung the wire all the way around. So you come down there and we're on the sideline. Normally he's up there calling plays, and so we're on the sideline and we luck out and we have a fine little nose guard, Steve Matthews, who makes a great play on defense, picks the ball up and runs 50-something yards and scores. And we're now down 14-7. We go into the last quarter. We've got a 61 sprint out pass, and we've got a 61 draw. And the kid that we bring to the sideline and we send the play in is the smartest kid, and he's deceased now today, and I love him to death. And old Richard Hawkins, and he gets in confused because we were talking about it on the side, and he ends up calling a 61 draw. And we run it to tight end side, and we've never run it to tight end side, and we go to the 2-yard line and get that thing in. Of course, we kicked the extra point. Craig never missed, and then of course he kept us in the ball game with his punts that night. I'm telling you, he put it on an exhibition. I mean, punted that thing, I know, for 48-yard average. So we're sitting there 14-14. We got the ball on their 20-yard line, and we're gonna take a knee. And I let Virgil, I'm gonna tell it this time, just like it is, talk me into throwing that football. But bottom line, it's me. And so we throw the football. And it looked like a New York Life commercial because, I mean, we fall here, we fall there, and the kid gets it in the end zone, and we get beat on the last play of the game. My dad's over there cussing me on the sideline. So what are you doing? So I tried to give Virgil credit for it a little bit later, but I couldn't. But it was, as I said, a team effort. It was a thing, and I agreed with him. It was the thing to do. we had a great quarterback, we had a great receiver. We throw the ball, and they just happen to pick it off and go score. You know, it's just one of those things. We had a great year. Never forget it, though, because the old boy at Durant, Dib Dozell, he calls and he says, "Can I have that film?" And I said, "Yeah, you can have the film." I said, "I'm not coming and meeting you, not taking it, bringing it to you. If you want it, you come get it." And so anyway, he comes and gets it, but he says, "You know, Coach," he said, "I just tell you," he said, "I've been there where you are, and it's bad thinking, hey, I got here, I had these kids, when will I get back?" Well, I knew we was going to be back, and then we were. But anyway, that was one of them. I have more, Craig, but I won't take any more time. I'll let them
Well,
say.
the part of that, the part of that we don't throw out there is, do you remember the running back at Grove?
Oh, yes, yeah,
We
yeah.
had stopped him all night long.
Well, and is he the one that's head football
He's
coach?
the
at
coach.
Arkansas University?
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that's the funny part about it. There he was at Grove as a running back, and Charlie Cooper was the head coach.
That's right.
And that's where
his
Sam
son was a
lived. Did you know
quarterback.
that?
I did not know that.
Sam lived with
He lived
Coach Cooper,
Okay.
kind of as a stepson
Well,
or whatever.
you know,
He needed help.
Here's the thing, they had, here's the real, he had his own son, Mark Cooper, who played quarterback, okay? And then he had a Mark Willis, and Charlie Cooper told me the story about this years later. And then when they got to Grove, they picked up Sam, but they lived in Independence, Kansas, and they were leaving, they were packed up, had the U-Haul packed up, and they were headed to Grove, Oklahoma, and a lady down the street said, never met her before, he knew Mark, you know, because he was playing with Mark Cooper all the time. And she said, "I just don't think you can go without taking Mark Willis with you." And it was that kid's mother. And she basically gave Charlie, they were leaving that day, and she basically gave up Mark Willis, and he jumped in that truck and went with them. And has been with them ever since.
And
And then when they got there, they picked up Sam, you know. He just gathered them all
Yeah,
up.
I had 3 great athletes. I really
Yes.
did.
Yes.
okay, we took your time.
Yeah.
It's all right. I really don't have but two things that are really, well, they're all bad when you lose. But sometimes you learn when you know, it's like walking. You got to fall down before you learn to get up. And I guess sometimes in losses we don't look at it that way, but I always hope we could learn something from a loss. One's an assistant coach story, one's a head coach story. The assistant coach story, I was sort of, well, I'll put it this way, I was the coach's pet. I think these guys knew that too. After they came, they found out I was kind of Coach Latimore's pet.
Speaking of that, I'm going to interrupt you just real quick. I'm sitting in the Leslie's Cafe with Perry Lattimore after the season, or my first season with him. 2 other guys are in there, and the first thing he says was, "We really missed old Dennis this year." And I looked at him, and he said, "What's the expression on your face for?" I said, "Well, I'm the one that took Dennis's place. What are you talking about? We really missed Dennis, you know." Well, anyway, go ahead. Yeah, you're right. You are the pet.
As an assistant coach in 1970, we were really a good football team. Steve Davis was quarterback. Of course, he went on to play at OU. And we had a really good team, and we were in the semifinals, and we had the lead by 2 points. And we had something like 3rd or 4th down against this team, and it was quite a bit of yardage to go. And one of our assistant coaches told one of our players, "Watch for this particular play," because it was at midfield. And that player on the play happened just like we thought it was going to happen, because we knew they had a special play and they hadn't run it. And he went exactly where he wasn't supposed to go, and the guy on that team went where he was supposed to go, and they threw him the ball, and he was 20 yards down the field all by himself. He catches the ball and scores.
Is that
Now-
no water?
Is that no one?
Against no water.
Yeah.
And I won't call any names of players or anything. Then we get the ball back, and now we've got 3rd down and 2, and we're at midfield, and we have about 20 seconds to go with 1 timeout. We're down by 2 or 3 points. Coach Lattimore turns to me, and this is not a moment that I want to talk about. He turns to me and he says, "Raj," he said, "what do we need to run? And he kind of treated me that way, and that's why I said, I was kind of his pet, and I was really the offensive coordinator for him, as well as line coach. And I said, Coach, we've been working for 2 weeks on a tackle eligible play. That's a play where today you can't run it. If you have a number that's not a legal number for a receiver or a back, you can't catch the ball. Well, then we could. And so our formation we had pulled the end back 2 steps to make him a back. We pulled the tackle on the end, it was the receiver on that side. And we moved another back on the other side up to the line, which we would have the proper number of people on the line. We fake the ball, run to the right, stop, tackle counts 1,001, 1,002, release. He releases to the outside, and everybody in the stadium, including the fans, were over here with the ball. He throws it to the tackle who's standing in the end zone. Nobody there. He catches it in 2 hands and it slides through his arms to the ground, and we get beat. That was.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that story. I did not know
that made us sick.
Me either. That's probably one you don't want to tell
You just don't. I mean, this team goes on and wins the state championship with ease. That should have, could have, and would have been our first state championship. It didn't happen, and I'm sure the kid that dropped the ball is still living with it today. But it's just a game. It isn't life and death. The other game was almost life and death. I have twin brothers who were playing at Muldrow. One of them's quarterback and one of them's end. Now, Tulsa World writes a story about family feud. Arch rivals. I played at Muldrow. Coach Lattimore had coached at Muldrow, started the program. I came up here with him, so as
Won the state championship at Muldrow
in
in basketball with you playing.
And so he's passed on, and there's still animosities there, okay? I mean, it's a big crowd. They're hanging off the walls. And we're down there playing, and they've got a former pro football player who was OU star as their head coach. And so I'd gone to college, he had gone to college, I followed him. Now we're battling out, and I got twin brothers playing. And they beat us.
And we're 7-0 going into the game.
We were kind of thinking about, we were all in the top 10 for 3 years in a row. We're kind of thinking about getting on to the state tournament. And there was a few things happened in the game that probably shouldn't have happened, officiating wise, but nevertheless it happened. We got beat. That is hard to live with when your twin baby brothers beat you as the head coach. And now Dad and Mom, I don't know how hard it was on them. They never would say who they were pulling for, but I think they were pulling for the oldest son because they knew that was my job on the line, But never asked them. Anyhow, that was a hard game to live with. And then the next year, we were talking about it for a minute ago, they come back to Sallisaw to play us, and I mean, it's a battle royal again. And this time, my brother dodges and messes around in the end zone right before the halftime and throws a pass to ground the ball so he wouldn't get tackled. And the referee throws a penalty flag and penalizes him, but the penalty and the referee didn't agree according to the rule book.
Should have been a safety.
It should have been a safety. We get 2 points. We would have been ahead by 1 because we were down 1. Now we go in the dressing room down 1, and I'm thinking, not again. This will be the end of the world. We come back out and we throw a screen pass. They throw a screen pass. Little brother, he throws a screen pass to other brother. And our defensive end, I think Coach Terry was coaching at the time.
It was
Charlie Rainey.
okay.
He sees it coming and he intercepts it, and we score and beat them. Had that not happened, I would have probably, along with Coach Terry, we'd have probably choked the referee. But he called later on Monday when he got back to Tulsa, and they didn't know us. They were from Tulsa.
Don't you love that when they call us?
And they call you and he says, Coach, I'm sorry, but we were wrong. And I said, yeah, you could have cost me a job. and embarrassment and hurt for the rest of my life. And we tried to tell you that that was a 2-point safety because he dodged the safety by intent. You cannot use a penalty to better yourself. And so he did, and they didn't. But thank goodness we caught, intercepted the pass and scored. That would have been the tough game. It wasn't the most exciting thing to coach, I'll tell you.
Well, contrary to what a lot of people think about coaches and referees, sometimes we know the rules.
Yeah, well, that's the truth.
And maybe better than them.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Sometimes is right. So let me ask you this question. If you had it to do over again, what would you change?
I can't go to somebody else. I got to think about that.
Okay,
for a while.
yes, I know.
I have no idea what I would change.
What would you change?
Trying to think myself, and I know I lost a couple ball games as a coach. You know, I'd like to change those, and that, I mean, one was the ego thing I was talking about. I mean, because we run that split back veer, and, you know, we didn't need to be in it. You know, we needed it, but I was wanting some identity. I'll never forget that after we had those 2 great years, the next year we drop off 4 and 6, and it's because we were the bottom of the classification instead of the top.
And here's the thing, that crew goes to Stillwell and beats them half to death. That 80, it was the 82 squad, 82 year, the 83 graduated class. You guys go to Stillwell and beat them half to death, and Stillwell goes to the semifinals or the finals, one of the two, I don't know.
In the class we should have been in.
In this class you should have been in, but you guys jumped 2 classes.
Right.
And you went from 2A to 4A.
Yeah, because they increased the number of classes.
Exactly.
Is what happened. So.
But what it does is, when it increases those classes, it blends some of those ones that came out of a bigger class. You know, I mean, even though you're jumping a class, you would have jumped a class anyway. You got those people, but you also get some of those, the bottom half of that class 2 ahead of you, that are two ahead of you.
Right, but what's funny about football, and this Sallisaw football, because, and this is a good thing, I agree with what Craig said earlier, I don't want a job they're not in it. And when you go out there on Friday night, Sallisaw fans are in it. I mean, you're in the game, and so that's why I really enjoyed coaching here. And so anyway, but we're in a booster club meeting, and they expect you in the booster club to win too. So OSU was having a down year. Pat Jones was head coach, and they were down at that point in time. He didn't have one of those great running backs and so forth. And so had a booster, well-known booster in the town, that real big-time OSU fan. And he's sitting there, and he said, "What's the matter with them, Coach? What do they need to do different?" And I'm starting to say something, and his sister sitting right across the table, and she said, "You're asking him?" You know, I mean, 'cause that year we just came off that great year, and now we're sitting 2 and 4. Okay, and you're asking him. It's like, you know, hey, one year they may name a street after you, next year they may kick your tail end down it, and that's just the way it is. That's football.
Oh,
That's football.
well said, well said.
Coach Rogers, what about you? If you had to do over again, what would you do different?
Well, I told Coach Hitchens this one day. I said I wouldn't be as hard-headed as I was, but I was a first-time head football coach. Wasn't prepared, okay, with a week before season started, personally. So what did I do? What do we always do? We fall back on what we know. And so instead of trying to change and do something, I just fell back on what I knew, and I tried to change a little bit, but it didn't work. Here's the thing about high school football. There's a lot of, I think, and these guys may agree, they may disagree, but I think that we have to fit our thinking to the kids we have. And you can't fit their thinking or our thinking into them if they don't have what they need to have to do what we do. I would have probably changed some of the things I did. I know what I would have done as a person outside of just calling plays or having this football, the X's and O's. I would be more one-on-one with a young man in the dressing room. I think Virgil had it right. When you're in a group coaching let's say the offensive line, they're almost your friend. When you're the head coach, you can't really be friends with any of them because this kid says, well, he's your pet, or this dad says you're playing him because you like him. When you got 8 or 10 kids who are playing for 5 spots, they know who the best 5 are. They know who the 6th and 7th man is. And you form a bond. They talk about in the Army, how they form a bond when you're in war. You form a bond with the players that play for you in a certain position. As a head coach, you don't really have a bond with all of them. I would like to have stood at the door. If I had it to do over, I would stand at the door every evening, no matter if I was aggravated at the way they practice or was mad at them for doing something stupid in the classroom. I would have stood at the door and shook hands with them and patted them on the back and said, hey, tomorrow everything is going to be better. And I really believe that would have helped me and helped the kids had I been able to do that. I didn't. As I got older, as I had a son that went through the program, I had really, I don't know if it was a privilege or not. It wasn't a privilege to him. I had to coach his position. And I was a little tough on him. But I think that's the one thing I'd change. I would try to be more of a compassionate person to all the kids and involve myself with them.
I think we can all sit here, we can go back and we can say, boy, I wish I'd have done this different. Or I wish I'd have, there's always something you can say that you wish you'd have done different. But I can tell you this, I enjoyed my time here. I did. I was, like I say, I was very fortunate. I was from here. I had great resources here. I knew where every kid came from. One time I had it counted up, and I'm not sure this number's right, but I had like 19 siblings that I coached. There's another 13 of those kids that I coached were former players in some way, teammates of mine, kids. Timmy Blunt told me one time when I came to town, he said, I told him, I said, he was talking about Chance, and his only son. He said something like, made a comment, and I said, well, I'm going to tell you something, Tim. I said, I'm going to have more control over your kid than you will. And he said, oh, you're crazy. He just bristled up. He said, you're crazy. I got a great relationship with my son. And I go, okay. I said, here in about 7 years, I said, I want you to come back and let's revisit this conversation. And he was, Chance was a 7th grader at that time. And sure enough, 7 years later, he brought it back up and said, I never in my life knew that would happen. I thought, as good a relationship as I had with my son, he said, you always trumped me until he graduated and got out of the house after he was out of the locker room. I was very, and I think the thing that I enjoyed most about this job, even though it comes with, I tell people this all the time, I used to lay awake at night scared to death that I was going to get fired. In the sense of, if we don't win enough games, if I don't do things right, all of those kind of things. And I was born and raised here, and it was such a pride thing that I was going to do everything I could to make sure that this thing worked. But the relationships that I've got and the friends that I have now that turned from, you take Quint, your grandson. I still have a relationship. I still talk to him at least once a month, sometimes more. I just had dinner with him in Fayetteville a couple of months back. I see these guys that work for the city, the guys that work around town, and even, the Matt Overstey and the Ben Overstey, the ones that Ben's still here in the community, but Matt, who's out of our community and lives in Tulsa, I still interact with those guys. And I wouldn't give up those relationships for nothing. So,
you say that some of the best things that ever happened to you are hearing from one of those guys.
Oh,
it's true.
No question about it.
It's true.
Hey, Coach, how you doing? This is Billy Bob. And then for them to say things like, I wanted to thank you for,
Whatever it was.
Fill in the blank.
Right.
And man, you talk about just filling up.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Golly, and
That's what coaching does for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I might not even thought about that, but it hadn't been a week. It hasn't been a week since I heard from an ex-player.
Yeah.
And man, I like it. I truly enjoy it.
Yeah, you come here under Dennis. Dennis brings you in.
By the way, thank you, Coach Rogers. I'll never, ever be able to thank you enough for hiring me.
I don't know how many years ago when I was thinking about that coming here, and you're still here. I mean, this is where, this is you.
You planted a flag.
Yourself, yeah.
The only time I ever wanted to be anyplace else was when you left.
Okay.
And
Which is another part of the story. I don't hate to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No,
There's
go
another
ahead.
part of that story because when he left, then I joined his staff.
Yeah, that's, I got a story on that after
And
you
I'm
finish.
so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that Coach Ivins got so tired of losing to Sallisaw that he dropped us from the schedule, refused to play us anymore. Coach Etheridge quits and goes up there and takes the job. God, you won 10 games or more 2 years in a row, didn't you?
Yeah, we had good years.
I mean,
2 good years. There's athletes.
Well,
Yeah, that's the reason. That's how you have good years.
If we had played Stillwell that next year like we always had, it would have been the first time they ever beat us since I came here.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, first time they ever could have beaten us.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't give up till it happens, do we?
No. I got a quick story on that now, because yes, I tried to get these guys to go with me, and their ties are so deep here. The roots are embedded in Sallisaw football, and that's what I like. I'm glad they were. I mean, but I still tried to get them to go, and I knew I couldn't get any to go, so I get a former coach that had been here with us, and Bill Farney. And I'm like Charlie Cooper. I guarantee you, if Farney couldn't coach a lick, I'd still have him on my staff because he was just so fun to be around, and he just kept you going. And then of course I called Craig and I say, hey, you want to go join my staff? And Craig had been up at buy-in, and he said, a coach in a heartbeat. And I knew that could happen. And so he's the offensive coordinator, and Bill's the defensive coordinator. Well, we're playing a third game or second round of playoffs. And the first time, and we have a good team, but the first time we have the ball, we throw a pick, and it's pick six, or they get 7 out of the deal. And the next time we have the ball, we fumble it, and they get 3 out of it, and we're down 10-0.
At Cleveland.
At Cleveland. Craig doesn't call another play. And he comes to me when the game's over. Coach, what's the deal? I said, Craig. He said, am I going to get the call next week? I said, yeah, don't throw a pick, don't fumble the football. I said, it's my job, not yours. I said, they'll fire me real quick, and they'll keep you around here. So anyway, that's
trust me.
Yeah.
But you know, those are the things those are not just stories, but those are lessons, you know, that you learn as a young coach that you have to apply when you become, you know, I always tell people all the time, I don't get to turn around to the stands out here at Sallisaw and tell them, hey, I'm doing the very best I can. They don't care. They want to see progress. They want to see people. They want to see you win ball games. You know, they don't care how. You know, it's like serving a meal. They don't care. They're not going to go back in the kitchen and see how it's prepared. Yeah. They just want to eat, and they better be good.
That's right. You know? Hey, one last quick one for me. I mean, I don't know where you're going with this thing further, but we're working in the summer. We all work together, and that's. I mean, you create, you know, harmony there. I mean, also it's just a bond. And we have an old boy that's working with us that teaches school with us over at middle school, Billy Bob Nation. Never forget it as long as I live. And Nation, he wants to call a play. And I said, okay, Nate, we're going to let you call the first play of the game. It was against Muldrow, by the way.
Yes, it was.
And I said, you got to use our formation. Okay, you go home, you draw it up, you work on it, you call it. And he said, okay.
I was in the press box with him when he called
it. He runs a reverse wide side of the field. Rick Smith, he goes 65 yards for a touchdown. You look back at old Nate, and he's holding him up right here.
And he looked at me, he said, I don't see why y'all think this is a tough job. he said, somebody like me should have appeared and scored a touchdown.
Yeah,
he said,
I
don't even know why they pay you guys extra.
It's not hard because his salary wasn't his contract wasn't in the back pocket of a 15 or 16-year-old kid.
Right. Yeah.
I always said the toughest job in the world and the most fun. We really did it for fun as coaches. But when you're the head coach, it's not nearly as much fun when the contract of your job is in the back pocket of a 15 or 16-year-old kid and you think, oh, this is a little different now.
Yeah.
Years ago, when I first started coaching, I was still in Florida. A mother brought me like a 3 or 4 foot poster. On this poster, was this little skinny kid in a football suit. He had his helmet off. He's all sweaty and just looked like just really looked bad. But underneath it said, "Would you trust your job to this guy?"
Yeah,
And
pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
I did 33 years.
Yeah.
How about you?
There you go.
Or 38, I'm sorry. 30 something here.
Well, you're speaking about that. I had a lot of fun coaching. I also taught classes. We all had to teach classes. Now it's a little different. My salary when I came here was $800 to be a coach, plus my teaching. And I will not go any further than that. And the other day, one of my former players said, "Coach, you're still working. How come?" I said, "Well, you haven't checked Oklahoma State Teachers Retirement Program whenever I was teaching school. I started out at $6,000 a year." He couldn't believe
Teaching
it.
and coaching.
Teaching and coaching at Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I've heard Joe
You know-
Jeffers talk about when he was at Marietta. I think there was
6,400.
6,400, and you had to drive a bus, or had a bus route you ran in the
Well,
morning.
I even had to drive a bus here one time because the guy pulled a shotgun on the bus driver, and the superintendent come got me. He said, "You're the biggest guy I got." He said, "You go drive." That happened up north of town, and so I had to drive the bus for a week till they get a bus driver.
Oh, man. Well, I had taken a job in Fort Smith, Arkansas for $6,500.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Hey, coaching and all. And I was so excited. So I take off and I go work on the pipeline that summer. While I'm working on the pipeline, I get a call from a guy in Florida, of all places. Turns out I'd done an interview for a class in college,
Uh-huh.
and he pulled my
Like a
little
job fair kind of thing?
Yeah, he pulled my little resume thing and everything, and he said, "Would you be interested?" I said, "You bet I would, but could you find my wife a job?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I guarantee I can find her a job too." I said, "Well, let me know when and where to go." And $8,700.
Well, you get jackpot.
I mean, that
Man,
had to
I
go.
couldn't get that U-Haul trailer hooked up fast enough.
Plus, your buddy was down there.
Well,
Livingston.
no, he didn't come till,
Oh, you went before he did.
he came like 5 years after I was.
Okay, I didn't realize.
I didn't either. I didn't know that. I thought he was the reason, because I thought he was like 107 years old right now. I'm just joking. Make sure he's this. So, but I thought that he came and brought you with him.
Thanks for that, we're the same age. No, I worked there in Jacksonville for 5 years, and then he called. He'd been there 2 years, and their head coach quit, and he called me and said, please, I need some help.
I didn't know that story.
And
All these years.
we were lifelong friends. Had been friends since the first day I went to college. So, and plus I was a little upset over a few other things that had happened. And so I went down there the last 2 years I was there. I worked with him at a little school called Rockledge High School, which I will tell you right now, we went 6-4 the first year I was there, and that was the first winning season they had ever had since they opened the school.
Wow.
Got to tell this about Virgil's coming. He, JT Stites, high school principal. JT, great guy. I mean, we
Yes,
all work
sir.
for him. I mean, they didn't make him any better. And anyway, and he helped us so many times over at that football field when it's time to, turn the soil. He'd bring his tractor up, his disc, and we just did things like that and did it together. But old Virgil, he asked Virgil, he said, "You teach driver's ed?" "Oh yeah, I teach driver's ed." And so anyway, school gets ready to start, and he looks and he said, "Bring me a transcript, by the way." So he brings a transcript, and he says, "Where does it say on here you can teach driver's ed? You didn't ask me if I was certified to teach driver's ed. You asked me if I could teach it."
That's how bad I wanted that job.
Which was a great thing because I got to teach it after because it was on my certificate.
That's a
Well.
good story. Okay, last thing we're here to talk about is our staffs. It goes without saying, if you're not surrounded by good people, good players, you've got no chance. You can have the best plan. You can be the smartest guy. You can be smart enough to launch a space shuttle, but if you're not surrounded by good people and allow them to work and take their input, and then have good players that are smart enough to understand your plan, it doesn't work. Who'd you start out with on your staff, Coach Terry?
Oh, golly, you're asking a 75-year-old man to remember James Singleton and Scott Bethel and Rob Johnson. And Lord, those are the ones that really stick out for me. Larry Coleman.
I was about to say his name.
And,
Is he here?
You said Rob.
and Ronnie Asbel, oh my gosh.
There you go, yeah.
I mean, I had some of the greatest guys, and the thing about a staff like that is they can help you overcome a lot of shortcomings as far as players go. You may not have the best athlete here or the best athlete there, but you can coach them. Those guys could coach those kids to be better than they were physically.
True.
And man, I tell you, things like that going off a long way. Plus the fact that no matter what, hey guys, we need to get together. Hey guys, we need to come in early on Saturday. Not that we didn't come in on every Saturday anyway, which we did, but we need to come in earlier this Saturday, or we need to stay longer Saturday, or I need to see you Sunday right after church instead of 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or
Exactly.
whenever we met on, whenever we got together with coaches and players on Sunday to go over, pardon this old phrase, film.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I mean, we started out with what was 16 millimeters, big old reels that
Oh, yeah.
no matter what, you know, when you're running through with the players, it would break at a crucial time, and you'd have to
Reset it.
anyway. And then we
But,
what'd we get?
I think we went from there, it went to Betamax, right?
Is that VHS?
Well, it was VHS, no.
Well,
I-
little
it was
cartridges
it was
about so
VHS,
big
it was
that you could
VHS
stick in there.
next, and then it went to Betamax, and then it went to CD,
Yeah.
and then I was the one I was the first year where we went to a hard drive. You know, I didn't know what a hard drive was, a little box, it had a cord to it, and then from that it went to the iCloud, you know, where it is now. You can get anything you want now.
See, you saying that reminded me of another guy, Scott Bethel, who's on
Right,
my staff.
right.
And the reason I thought about Scott was he would set up everything like that for me so I could watch it.
Right, as he did me.
That's good.
So those guys came in pretty handy.
Right.
Not only did they contribute on the field, they did a lot of other places too.
How about you?
Okay, Ronnie Asbel comes to my mind right off the bat, and Ronnie, of course, had been here with Dennis and with Barry Floyd, and played his ball here. I played against Ronnie in high school, and he at that time was a defensive coordinator, and to be honest, he's wanting the head football job, and of course, you know, if you got an ego about you, you want the head football job, and so. If you don't want to be a head football coach, then to me there was something wrong with you, and I wanted to be one as well. And so, never forget the first morning that I was given the job, I knew where Ronnie would be, and I go look him up because he had a little bit longer tenure than I did, and I knew he's hurt. And you know, I looked at him and I told him, Ronnie, I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I said, I want this job too, and I said, it's one of those deals where you're going to be the defense coordinator. I'm not going to question you. We're going to continue on just as we have been. And in time, hopefully, we'll learn to work with one another and you'll respect what I do. He said, I'll do anything that you ask me to do. He said, I'm a Sallisaw Black Diamond. And that's the way that he accepted it. And we had all the years that I had as a head football coach, Ronnie was with me as a defensive coordinator. And then Virgil, of course, was already on the staff, and I knew barely as far as an offensive mind, as far as a defensive mind. He knew a whole lot more football than I did. And I'll say that today. He was good. You put him in that box. He was the first one on the projector watching the film. He had already dissected everything, had it broke down, knew what we needed to do, or felt like he knew what we needed to do before we ever really got started into it. And I always appreciated that and respected, you know, his knowledge of the game and the role that he played. Bill Wheaton, I got to hire Bill Wheaton as a girls basketball assistant coach when I was coaching girls basketball. The 6-on-6 took Bob Hill took your place, and then I come in after that. Had a couple years of that, and I knew how Bill would coach because he was so disciplined. Everything just had to be so. Besides that, he took care of all our equipment, and he made sure it was taken care of each and every day. Made sure the kids got what they wanted. You can't. Those guys, you have to have them. And but plus, Bill was a great secondary coach. I mean, a great secondary coach. Never forget, Bill had a situation where he was playing a player that I didn't feel like should be playing ahead of someone else. That player gets beat in a big ball game, and I go to Bill. He said, "You don't have to say a word. He's out there." I said, "Okay, that's all I needed." And anyway, the Bill was that kind of coach. Then Randy Wood, who's superintendent here right now, and anyway, Randy, he's a backfield coach, and it didn't make him any better. I mean, he's going to work it, and he's going to work it hard, and each and every day, and everything was timing. Everything was timing, and it was precision with him, and you didn't question. I never forget one time he's trying to talk to Craig over here about a play. Virgil being the offensive coordinator, he was in there talking to him, and then me being the head coach, I was in there talking to him, and I said, "Hey, wait a minute. 3 guys trying to tell one player one thing." And I said, "It can't happen." I said, "Virgil, get out of there. I'm getting out of there. Let Randy coach it." And that's the way we handled it. But we worked together. And then Larry Coleman, I'll never forget Coleman's first time he come in here. He hounded me the whole summer till we hired him, and that's why we hired him. And you take a guy like old Larry, he's going to do anything you ask of him. And I felt like a very good coach. And then Virgil, unfortunately, had a situation where he had a heart attack at a young man's age, and
How old were you when you had that? Weren't you like 52, 53?
they love him.
36.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
That was in 19.
Oh, no, that's right.
I know when it
That's
was.
right. That's
It's in
exactly right. 'Cause
summer.
You guys were young.
Wasn't
It was the summer of '86.
It was a myocardial infarction.
Oh, okay, okay.
But
And my
anyway,
friend Ron Etheridge came to visit me in the hospital.
Yeah.
I had been a heavy smoker. And he walked in, and he grinned, and he threw a pack of cigarettes on my bed. Never smoked again.
that's great. That's great. But so we wasn't able to use him that year, and I go to our superintendent at that point in time, and I said, "Listen, I've got this thing worked out. I'm gonna be coaching Coach Short, and we don't have enough as it is anyway." And I said, "But I got it worked out curriculum-wise." I said, "Well, it's not going to affect us." And that particular day, he said, "No, I'm not going to allow that to happen. We're not going to upset our curriculum." And I said, "Okay." I said, if they need to know, they'll know downtown. And I shouldn't have never said that. I never should have said that.
Worked, didn't it?
But it worked. That's right. That's right. And from that, he told me, "Go ahead and get your coach out there." And so Big D come back to work, and I'd work for him. And that doesn't happen very often, where someone that you work for, you go ask. But I knew what kind of friend he was. I knew how loyal he was, and I knew what kind of offensive line coach he was. I mean, and he could get it done. And so we run a little different offense. And it's funny because I think about it today. He sat in there in that coach's office. He'd have those note cards, and he'd be studying those note cards on what he's supposed to do. And he'd ask me questions and things like that. We got all that ironed out, and we had some pretty good football teams, at that time too. And of course, when Virgil came back, Dennis stays, and so Virgil ends up coming back in the same capacity, and it kind of moved me from what I was used to coaching to something different. In fact, I think I had to coach linebackers that year that you were out there, and so
You and Doug.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. That's right. I had.
Who was the starter?
Yeah. There you go. Exactly. So. But,
I always say that because you told me that.
That's right, exactly, Dave. But, I tell you, as these guys said, and I'm almost through here, you can't do it. It takes players, it takes assistant coaches, and, it takes a team. Of course, Craig coached for me up there at Stillwell, and he saw I worked. He tried to leave on me, was getting ready to get a head coaching job, and he got mad at me because I wouldn't call the school over there that I said, they can call me Craig. And I told him later, I said, Craig, I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to have to play. I didn't want to have to coach against you. And I said, that's why I said they can call me. And I think they end up calling me Craig.
Yeah.
But, and then later you go on and you leave and go to Sapola, you know.
No, left with Northeastern.
Yeah, Northeastern,
Yeah,
yeah.
with Northeastern,
Sapola.
yeah.
Yeah, Tom, he's out there checking you out every practice. I mean, I knew what was getting ready to happen,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah.
But you have to have people like that, and I couldn't say enough about the guys I coached with. I knew they were in my corner. I had someone tell me one time, you better watch out. Yeah, I hear a couple of them talking about you in Leslie's Cafe. I knew different, I promise you. We were all together winning, we were all together losing. And when we lost, we didn't want anyone else around. We just wanted us. And that too is fond memories right there.
Right.
I mean,
I think some of those, you know, some of your relationships are forged in those times that are off the field. That's what I think this new generation misses so much. I had a guy tell me just yesterday. He said, you know, because we always had a get together after every game at my house, and we always had something to eat, and we could sit down and talk and decompress. And he said, you know, because he lived down the street from me, and he said, I think the thing that's missing now at this younger generation is that he goes, you know, I used to every Friday night after a home game, I'd drive by your house, I'd barely get through the street with all the wives' cars and coaches' cars. And he said, they don't do that anymore.
Right.
These guys, this new generation, they're detached. And I think if you're detached from your staff, you know, I think that's where those bonds are forged and where that trust is forged and all of those things that you know, because here's the thing, if I can't have dinner with a bunch of guys I enjoy it, I don't want to be around them anyway. You know?
Well, you know, he's not here. Coach Lancaster's not here. But he brought one thing with him that he made sure we all knew immediately, almost upon his arrival. Wednesday night will be date night for the coach's staff. We all got together and went somewhere for dinner together every Wednesday night. And believe it or not, our wives tolerated all that, what we were going to do the rest of the week, talk while we were having dinner on Wednesday night.
Oh, that's really pretty good.
And I thought it was a good idea, you know, and there was quite a bit of bonding that went on over there.
Right,
You know,
right.
It would be.
How about you, Coach Rogers? Who was on your staff when you took over?
Well,
and who throughout your tenure?
You know, I think what they're saying, you know, is so true about the staff. Let me start at the beginning. When I came here in '69, and Craig related to this in a way, and I was going to talk about this. In '69, when I came here, I had to be the assistant boys basketball coach. I had to coach the 9th grade boys. I had to coach high school track and junior high track. So I had a pretty full plate there, and plus I was teaching some classes. But we had on our staff Coach Collins, Coach Brown, a wrestling coach who had just came here, myself, and the head coach. There was 5 coaches in 5 different sports who played, or not played, but worked together. We didn't have some of the spring sports that we have now. But here's the thing about our staff. We all got along really, really well because we would keep the clock as football coaches during the basketball season. And during track season, the other coaches would come and help run the track meet off, because it takes a lot of people to do the timing and to do all the things you do in track because you have so many different events. All the coaches helped, and we all stayed together. And whenever I became girls basketball coach, I knew the other coaches were going to be there. Whenever that season was over, I would be in track, and I knew they would help. So it was a time where we all depended on each other and worked with each other. And then we would go out every Friday night after football, and we would have a meal of some kind and gossip and talk about football. And a lot of times we had parents. Didn't even have kids. I know one family didn't have any kids in the program, but they liked football so well that one night each year, all the time I was here, they had a special meal just for the coaches to come over and eat with them after the game. I don't know if today's football, as Craig was relating to there, if you could get the girls basketball coach, the track coach, the baseball coach, if we're not the same people, how do you get all of them to help you during the year? And because we could depend on each other in each sport, then you didn't have to worry about things. Now, how about that in football? We had 5 coaches on the staff who coached 5 different positions. Guys, that was unheard of in 1969 in high school. You didn't have, so what happened to Sallisaw? We had 72 young boys in football uniform in 1970. We had 72 boys in uniform.
10 through 12.
10
Yeah.
through 12.
Right.
And then we had 110 band members and the cheerleaders. And here's the thing that's different. When we went to play football more than 80 or 90 miles away, we had to go to Medill or Antlers or Miami, even when,
Hartshorn.
yeah, they chartered buses, the fans chartered buses, and they'd take 3 buses to take the fans in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and then if you came through this town and we were away on Friday night, somebody said during football season, there wasn't a door open on Main Street. It was closed. And so there was unity, but relating to that was the kids who grew up here at that time all knew each other, had been playing marbles, and these kids today don't know what that means, or mumble pig, or shooting hoops on the dirt court. Even if they couldn't play basketball, we'd all meet somewhere. You'd see kids out playing catch. You'd see a touch football game every evening by 4th graders with a football in the middle of the street. You'd have to stop and let them get out of the street because they'd throw the ball in the street. Everybody supported the system because we all knew each other. I don't even know my neighbor who they are now. And so society has changed so much, and football has changed so much. He's talking about the coaches. I don't know what kind of unity coaches have. I don't know whether they eat together. I don't know what they do. But I tell you this, the kids are raised in a technological world instead of an agronomy world. And so I think, without being negative about it, I think there's less discipline and less responsibility on the shoulders of these youngsters growing up. And I think that's why coaching today would be tough for me. My daughter said the other day, she said, "Dad, they'd fire you the first week you were in school because you want to run it your way, and it's going to be done that way, or it won't be done, so you can't do that anymore."
First week, Randy Wood told me I'd be gone 15 minutes,
So
and he'd be gone in 30.
that's how things have happened. I think football is still one of the greatest things to keep a youngster busy and to unite the school if you can get the coaches and the players all on the same page. That brings the community along, and without the community, you're in trouble.
I've said it a million times, it is the ultimate team sport.
Mm-hmm.
By the
No
way,
doubt.
we had family nights every Friday night, remember that?
Oh yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Big Tree.
Yeah.
We go to
That's
Big
right.
Tree.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap this up with my with my about my staff, and I have to start this with Ronnie Asbel. I mean, he for 42 years he was a staple at that facility. I can't give him enough credit. I got to tell him, what he was to me was not only he was more than a mentor, he was a guy that could guide me. He gave me great advice at every turn, and he always knew when I was troubled how he could kind of get me out of a coaching pinch per se. He was him and Scott Bethel were the 2 holdovers when I came in, and then we brought in Lewis Walker Stick was the first one I hired, ex Black Diamond, and a guy that we have a different kind of relationship because we don't run around all the time. But if I could not talk to him for 20 years and we'd pick up right where we left off, and Lewis was the guy that I was single when I was here, so I'd leave practice, go home, and come back, and sure enough, Lewis would be there waiting on me. So We had Dale Crittenden I brought in from Stillwell. David Steinberg we brought in from Stillwell. He came with me. And then Wes Green was one that we added later on, a former Black Diamond. But going back to Coach Asbel, and I'm going to close with this. You know, the stories he would tell if he was here, because he was pretty funny. He had a great way of telling things, but he was also, he wasn't just a great coach, but he could also follow too. That was the one thing that I really struggled as a young head coach with him. You know, because I had a lot of admiration and respect for him. And we come in, we play Seminole. You got that series started, which was a great one, you know. And it's part of the game. And I'll never forget this. He comes in and he said something, and I said some things I probably shouldn't as a young coach to a guy that's, you know, that coached me. And after the game, I said, Coach, I said, you know, it's my first game to coach here. I said, I'm sorry I reacted that way. And he goes, well, I thought it was great. He goes, I just didn't know if you had the stones to do it. So, you know, and that was really, and that really made us, our relationship a lot better.
That was part of his personality.
It was.
Testing you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, we appreciate our time here, and thank you.